Welcome, viewers, and the only two that actually bothered showing up today. Thank you both, Mustang and Sterling. Today, since I really did not have time to prepare like the past week for the dungeon drop that my party is about to go through, I instead decided to do a spin-off series. So welcome, one and all, to PenDragon Academy's tutorial, Episode 1, Vampire the Masquerade character creation. Today, of course, I am the, not exactly dungeon master, but I guess teacher in this particular sense, Rage Armor, and I am also joined by good old Shaxon Mustang.
Yep, I'm here.
And, yep, and Sterling.
Yellow.
Unfortunately, C. Rhino apparently has some orientation he needs to do today, so he couldn't make it, apparently. Tolgrim just didn't want to fucking do it, so he ain't here, and Claude had something he needed to do today, so, well, just me, Shaxon, and Sterling. So, yeah. Alright, so, I've already got it shared to both Sterling and Mustang, but for you, those who are watching at home, I guess we will start off with the base character sheet for Vampire the Masquerade. You're expected to, of course, give your character a name, players just, well, who you are, that way your sheet doesn't get lost in the pile of other people's sheets. The Chronicle pretty much just means the name of the particular campaign that it's in. Usually best to leave that blank unless you're in, like, multiple campaigns. Now for the slightly more fun stuff, nature and demeanor. In Dungeons and Dragons term, nature would be basically your ideals, what you personally believe in, stuff like that. Whereas demeanor is more like your personality trait, what comes out of you to for other people to see. Did not mean that to be as sexual as it was. Concept, easiest way to put it, just basically what your character does for a job, like accountant or some crap like that. Clan, we'll get into clans a little bit later. Generation in most Vampire the Masquerade games, the generation you're starting at will be typically 13th. It goes on a scale from 15 through, I've never seen it, but apparently second. But typically you'll start at 13th generation. There are a few things that you could do that will lower your generation, but you don't want to lower generation. You want to increase your generation. So you could start off, say, as a 14th or 15th, but in reality, you want your generation to be lower. More like 7 through 8, something like that. And Sire, pretty much the Sire is what your... basically who turns you into a vampire. That's all it boils down to. Mustang and Sterling, either of y'all got any questions about the base ideas?
So, the way I've heard nature and demeanor described, and this just may be me having lost things in translation or not understanding somewhere, but one is supposed to be kind of what you really are, and the other is what other people see, for lack of a better term?
That is correct. I tried to put it in as easy terms as I could and reference Dungeons and Dragons, but nature is what you really are, whereas demeanor is what other people see you as. To put it in Dungeons and Dragons term, nature is like your ideals, whereas demeanor is your personality traits. So, say for example, I will go on and get it shared with y'all right now. a character I made a long time ago, Jex Ovan Demirez. His nature is capitalist. He is for basically all about the money on the inside. He wants money, he'll do anything he can to get money. Whereas his demeanor is idealist. How I had planned on this playing out is, though he makes money, he also does basically like the Bill Gates thing and also tries to strive for a better world and like giving to charity and crap like that. Kind of ironic considering his concept, aka job, is a professional conspiracy theorist, but that's a story for another day.
Well, he is a Malkavian, so, you know.
Yeah. Any other questions?
That was the one I had.
Mustang?
No, I think that's good for now.
Alright, so I guess we'll get into not clans, but the factions first, as it's understanding the factions that you'll be able to understand the clans better. Within, not Dungeons & Dragons, within Vampire the Masquerade, typically there are 3 factions in which you could basically partake in. Usually it comes down to the first faction, which is the Camarilla. Basically think of them in terms of Dungeons & Dragons, basically think of them as like lawful evil. There is no, like, they're all about their law, upholding the Masquerade, and living alongside the humans without them knowing of the vampire's existence. The Masquerade is a construct made by the Camarilla, which is basically a set of guidelines. Don't use your disciplines out in public unless it's basically something that would be comparable to a human's ability to achieve it. Like, say, don't go and use Celerity 3 and run at Mach 5 down the road. You could go like Celerity 2 at most, and even then that's pushing it.
So, less Roadrunner, more Jesse Owens.
Pretty much. Another one of the Masquerade rules is do not feed in public unless in a specifically allotted space. Like, say you go to a bar. If you feed in a bar, you're more likely to be viewed as giving the lady a hickey or some crap like that. As opposed to if you're in a back alley and just chowing down, yeah, you'll probably break the Masquerade. Third, and one of the bigger rules is this purely has to pertain with the sire function, is you are not allowed to create any new vampires without getting express permission from both the primogen of your clan, which is basically the leader of your clan within the Camarilla, as well as the express permission from the prince itself, which is basically the overall leader of all the clans. Typically the prince will be a Ventru, but we'll get into the clans in a little bit. To create a vampire without express permission is an offense that, like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, have any of you viewers or Mustang and Sterling have played it, is an offense punishable by immediate death of both the sire and the fledgling. Fledgling being basically the newly created vampire.
Yeah, that was the opening sequence of that game, if I'm remembering.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, you're a vampire, and now we're gonna kill you.
Yep. So, yeah, Camarilla, pretty much, they're all wrapped up in their rules, and certain clans within the Camarilla are a little bit more lax on the rules, whereas others are a lot more strict on it. We'll get into those as we get into the clans. The next, think of them in real-world terms as the actual anonymous group. The actual group that goes out there and hacks websites and is generally a nuisance to the man and all that shit. They are the anarchs, and basically I get a fucking... Hey, thanks for hosting us, RPG Labs, even though I think you hosted us already. Anyways, the Anarchs are basically lawless, but not stupid. They are a bit more of the firm opinion that you don't need laws to tell you that you shouldn't go biting people's necks out in the middle of the street or unleashing a volcano underneath the World Trade Center or anything like that. You don't need laws to tell you that. It's common sense, and that's their firm belief. Basically, and I would liken it more to, basically, they want to be able to create the vampires they want to create without having to get permission. Because from what I've seen in a lot of Dungeon Masters games of Vampire the Masquerade, that's basically what it boils down to. They're pissed that they can't create vampires at their own volition. Which brings to the think chaotic evil of the group. The Sabbat, aka Sabbath. These guys are, to put it in my favorite terms, from Jack, who is a character in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, they're the big bad monsters. Yeah, get over yourself. They are basically the assholes, and more likely than not, if you create a character who is a Sabbat, most likely you will be what is known as a shovelhead, in which they basically turn you, beat you over the head, and then bury you. When you come out, you don't even oftentimes know that you're a vampire. They are just 100% unadulterated assholes. That's basically the Sabbat in a nutshell. So, with the 3 factions out of the way, there are technically more factions, but that's for that's for basically generation 7 through 3 kinds of games where you're getting into higher level shit. Basically epic level stuff for Vampire the Masquerade. So we're not going to worry about that. This is just the beginner's guide. So, out of the 3, you're more likely to play as either a Camarilla or as the Anarchs. The Sabbats, I very rarely see Sabbat games, but for the Camarilla and the I've lost my train of thought. How lovely. The Anarchs, for both of them, they have, for the most part, the same clan lineup. And give me a second. There we go. And basically, the clans that most people will end up playing boil down to one of 7 clans. The first of which are the Brujah. Now, there are technically 2 kinds of Brujah. For the most part, I'm going to be talking... I will briefly touch on the other one, but for the most part, I will be talking about the... what is more commonly known as the bastardized Brujah. These guys are... think... short-tempered, meathead biker assholes. That is the best way I can put them. The Brujah have the clan flaw of short fuse. Short fuse is exactly how it sounds. Whenever you have to make a check to resist going into frenzy or resist punching somebody's face in, the difficulty of this check is increased by 2. The Brujah, in addition, also have... Give me a second so I can share this with you two. The Brujah, in addition, also have the disciplines Celerity, Potence, and... Presence. Celerity, Potence, and Presence. For Celerity, when you expend a blood point... or from your blood pool, you can see that at the bottom of your character sheets. Each generation will have a set amount of blood they can have at maximum per day. But when you expend a blood point for 1 round, dependent on what level, say if you're using level 3 celerity, then you can expend 3 blood points to activate level 3 celerity, and for 1 round, you can have an extra 3 actions you can take, which can be used for movement, attacking, or other physical feats, such as use an item or that kind of stuff. Think of it kind of like haste, only much more limited, and you don't have to be stunned for an entire turn once it goes away. Potence is kind of like celerity, only instead of pumping blood points to get more actions, you're pumping blood points to just deal extra raw damage. Whenever you, let's say you want to make a melee attack. If Mustang and Sterling, if y'all are still looking at Jack's sheet here, he's got the strength of 2 and a brawl of 0. So if I were to make a melee attack, I rolled a 6 and a 5. Both of those would hit, and say if he had level 5 potence and I pumped 5 points into it, I would do an extra 5 on top of the damage I would deal, which would ultimately, with the 2 in strength, be an extra, basically 7 die worth of damage that I could do. How damage is calculated in this game is down here where it says health. You can take an amount of damage. Each 1 point of damage adds a tick to a box. So from that, a 5 or up, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 damage that has already been dealt to an enemy. I will get into healing damage a little bit later. But, yeah, that's the basic rundown of potence. Basically, you can increase the amount of damage die that you deal. In addition, you could also use it to, say, jump great distances or throw cars at people, but I've more often than not seen it in use of basically just increasing your damage die. And finally, you get into the slightly more complicated presence. For presence, I've personally never been a huge fan of presence, but presence is based, you ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula? Is basically how Dracula is described in there, where your eye is always drawn towards the main figure, Dracula. As you gain levels in presence, you can end up basically compelling somebody to come to your side, or frightening somebody through a dreadful gaze, or even just commanding absolute majesty over a large crowd. That basically sums up presence in a nutshell. Any questions about the Brewhouse?
Nope.
Alright. So, next we get... And this one's a little bit more complicated. Next is the Gangrel. As in the 20th anniversary of Vampire the Masquerade, Gangrel are not technically a part of the Camarilla anymore. I'm not sure what, story-wise, why the Gangrel aren't, but apparently they're just not. However, I'll cover them anyway because I grew up running in a campaign where the Gangrel were a part of the Camarilla. The Gangrel, think of them... easiest way to put it, think of them like the druids of the vampire games. At least the Circle of the Moon druids. Gangrels have the clan flaw of... best way to put it, beast shapes. Whenever they fall into a frenzy, they gain a permanent animalistic appearance. They could grow a tail or grow excessive amount of fur, or their hands turn into paws. That is their clan weakness. In addition, the gangrel also have 3 disciplines in which they could use. Give me a second. Animalism. Basically, animalism is the speak/summon animals version of disciplines. You could, at level 1, speak telepathically with animals that you whose eyes I meet, apparently. All the way up to level 5, where you could actually send your, like, when you're about to go into frenzy, you could send your beast into another person, and they go into frenzy instead. Animalism could be useful, and oftentimes is useful. In addition, they also gain the Fortitude discipline. Fortitude, put simply, is a way to soak damage. Whenever you take damage, you are allowed to roll, I believe, stamina plus fortitude to reduce damage by an amount. So, once again, off of the example that I just rolled earlier, if I had fortitude 5, with my stamina of 2, I would be rolling a total of 7, and off of that, from the damage that was dealt earlier by the potence, it would be reduced by 1 to 3 damage. So instead of being 4 wounded, it's 1. Fortitude, unlike potence and celerity, does not require blood to be activated, at least not from levels 1 through 5. It is just a passive, basically, you are a wall. That is Fortitude in a nutshell. And finally, gangrels gain a clan-specific discipline, Protean. Protean gives them basically the ability to assume shapes of beasts. At level 1, they gain what I know as Gleam of the Red Eye, but in newer editions it's called the Eye of the Beast, where you gain the ability to see in the dark. Usage of this power does turn your eyes red, thus the name Gleam of the Red Eye. Level 2 giving you Claws, which the wiki doesn't explain it well, but when you use level 2 Protean, whenever you make an unarmed melee attack against an enemy, any damage you deal is aggravated damage. Aggravated damage is much nastier than regular damage, as it takes extra things that you have to do in order to heal up that damage, which I will once again get into once I'm talking about healing damage. Meld into Earth, that's pretty simple, all the way up to turn yourself into different kinds of animals and Mist itself. And pretty much sums up gangrels. Any questions, you two?
So, one thing, and you may be saving this to cover this once you get to combat specifically, but what is Frenzy?
Frenzy is a state in which you lose total control of your character. There are multiple ways that your character can go into Frenzy. Most commonly is by a lack of blood points. If you get low or lose your last blood point, you are more often than not going to go into a frenzy. When a frenzy happens, the Dungeon Master takes over your character sheet for a time, unless it's your final frenzy, which happens when you have no humanity points. If you lose all of your humanity and go into frenzy, or when you lose your last humanity, you go into your final frenzy and you lose the character permanently. But a frenzy in a to frenzy in a nutshell is to basically lose control of your character. The beast is taken over and will basically attack indiscriminately until the Dungeon Master deems that the frenzy is over and you regain control of your character. Oftentimes, whenever a character goes into frenzy, they will commit certain acts which will reduce your humanity, such as, say, bursting through a wall and slaughtering that innocent couple that lives in the apartment next to you. You get it?
Yep.
Mustang, you got anything?
No, I'm just through all the disciplines. It's
Yeah.
organized in a way that I'm not used to.
Sorry, I did this last minute. I wanted to do alphabetical, but going through alphabetical and copying all this stuff down would have taken a lot more time.
Yeah.
Alright, so that pretty much covers Gangrel. Up next is this Dungeon Master's personal favorite clan, the Malkavians. Malkavians are basically the insane vampires. That being said, you don't have to play a Malkavian and just be the, oh, look at me, I'm so quirky and crazy. You can play a completely deadpan serious vampire as a Malkavian, who just so happens to have, say, bipolar disorder, where it makes them serious all the time. So you don't have to always be the comic relief whenever you play the Malkavian character. That being said, I am a huge advocate of... there is an official, air quotes, list of insanities in which you can take as a Malkavian, but I am a huge advocate of coming up with your own insanity for a Malkavian. Like, take Jekt Ovan Demiras here, for example. Well, actually, first off, I should say that the clan flaw of Malkavians is they are all crazy. They all have to have at least one, I forget what it's called. Give me 1 second. At least one derangement. Derangement basically being one insanity or mental disorder. For Jekt here, his one insanity, at least one of his insanities anyways, is something that I like to call Hollywoodism. He is, for as far as he knows, a by-the-book Bram Stoker's Dracula kind of vampire. So he's, oh, I can't see myself in the mirror, even though he's obviously standing in front of a mirror and his reflection's there. Oh, my shadow doesn't exist. Aha! Garlic, see? Aggravated damage! So, yeah, I am a big advocate of coming up with your own derangement for a Malkavian, as you could just have so much fun with that kind of stuff. Their clan disciplines are quite fun as well. The Malkavians gain Obfuscate, which, put simply, is the ability to turn yourself and eventually your allies invisible, as well as level 3, giving you the ability Mask of 1,000 Faces. If you've ever seen something like the 7 Faces of Dr. Lo, yes, I know that I am very dating myself here. It's basically like that. One person assuming another face. And in some cases, it could just be completely different from your own. Malkavians also have the Malkavian-only discipline, Demontation. Demontation is, put simply, the ability to inflict insanity on other people. So, say, for level 5 Demontation, you could take a look at somebody and decide that they now have 5 temporary derangements. So they all of a sudden have multiple personality disorder and autism and all that fun stuff. not making fun of autistic people, just, yeah, you could just decide that they're insane. To be honest, it's one of my more favorite disciplines, just because you could just sit back and just go, you're crazy now.
So did Jecht have anything to do with Hazadil's insanity, or is that just natural?
Hazardill's just a fucking bugbear. And finally, the Malkavian, give me a second, have the Auspex discipline. Auspex allows you to enhance your own senses. At level 1, you could raise one of your 5 senses to superhuman level. I've seen this more often than not used for enhanced hearing or sight, depending on if you're trying to track somebody or, say, use a sniper rifle or some crap like that. Level 2, Aura Perception, you gain the ability to see see people's aura, which could tell a lot about somebody. Like, say, you decide to use that and look upon somebody, or look upon your fellow vampire, and their aura is red with black veins. That means they did one of the most taboo things in vampire culture and committed diablerie, which is the act of basically devouring another vampire's soul. You could also get in touch with your ancestors, speak telepathically, and even eventually project yourself in astral form, all that kind of fun stuff. To be honest, I never really used Auspex. That's, just not a huge fan of it myself. That about sums up the craziness of Malkavians. Any questions?
Nope.
Mr. Shaxson? I will assume no. So, moving on.
I'm just looking through the O1.
Obfuscate.
Yeah. So basically at 3, you turn into Clayface, pretty much.
A much better version of Clayface, because under all that illusion, you're not a molting pile of shit.
Well, unless you're a Nosferatu.
Yeah, that's a big exception.
Yeah, so at 5, you could basically turn everybody, like, be able to change your entire group to look like another group.
Technically, yes. However, I've seen Cloak of the Gathering more often used to turn everybody invisible, as there are more situations where you use group invisibility over group disguise. Now, it is worth noting before I move on, I only listed up to the level 5 abilities of these disciplines. There are much higher levels, all the way up to level 10 for each discipline, but these are restricted to lower generation characters. For example, you can't even get level 6 into anything until you are a minimum of generation 7, I believe. Alright, any other questions before I move on?
Nope.
So just so I'm understanding mechanically, generation basically functions as your level, for lack of a better description?
Basically, yes. 13th is usually the generation that you start off at, which allows you to have up to 5 in any given attribute, ability, or advantages, which covers discipline, background, and virtues.
Okay.
I believe 7, you gain, basically, it goes up to 6, and you can just gain more generations as time goes on, and ultimately be able to get up to 10 in any of these given things. Alright, so, I guess I might as well cover it now as well. In order to increase your generation, there are one of 2 ways to do it. either your vampire needs to just be alive for an absurd amount of time, depending on what generation you're going for, potentially up to like 10,000 years of unlife. To, like, say if you want to try and make a Generation 2 character, you've got to be something like 50,000 years old.
Grandpa Simpson vampire.
Pretty much. However, it's going to be very rare if you ever play a Generation 2, as those are basically linked into sub-stories about Gehenna and the end of the world. The other method is one that I just talked about, but is all that is still a great taboo. In order to increase your generation, you could, instead of just waiting the absurd amount of time, devour the soul of a vampire who is of a lower generation than you. By devouring a soul, there is a chance, I believe a 50% chance, that your generation will be lowered by 1. In addition, when you commit diablerie, you have a chance of either, if they have a higher discipline level than you, like say if you've got Celerity 1 and they have Celerity 2, you have a chance of celerity increasing. You also have a very small, like I believe 10% chance of learning an entirely new discipline from the diablerie. There is a huge risk with diablerie, though, in that every time that you commit diablerie, there is a chance that the original soul will take over your body.
Would a Malkavian even notice that? I'm just sitting here thinking.
They would most certainly notice it, but that's because basically when the original soul takes over the body, the original soul is destroyed.
Yeah, that's not going away anytime soon.
Alright, so next is the friendly neighborhood punching bag, the Nosferatu. Nosferatu. The Nosferatu's clan flaw is they are ugly as fuck. Their clan flaw prevents their appearance from ever rising above 0. If you notice with Jecht, he's got an appearance of 4. If he was a Nosferatu, he wouldn't even have 1 point in appearance. That is their clan flaw. They are ugly as fuck. Their appearance, if they are ever seen in public, is an automatic break of the Masquerade. Because of this sorry, go on.
Torches and pitchforks for everybody.
Because of this, the Nosferatu also have the Obfuscate discipline, which at least level 2 will allow them to walk around invisibly on the surface without breaking the Masquerade, and at level 3 be able to walk around like a normal person, somewhat, as they are still ugly as fuck, just an illusion is shrouding their true form. In addition to that, Nosferatu also have the discipline Potence, which, as explained earlier, pretty much lets you just punch things very, very fucking hard. And Nosferatu also have the discipline Animalism. So, Nosferatu can be interesting, just a lot of people refuse to play it as they do not want to be uglier than sin. And that pretty much sums up the Nosferatu. Gets a lot easier to explain these as you go on. Any questions?
Nope.
No.
Alright. Next is the oh-so-fun Toreador. To quote the Malkavian Player's Guide, Toreador go poo-poo on the floor. I freaking love that quote. At any rate, the Toreador are... Think of them the artsy-fartsy of the vampire world. They're always at art exhibits and holier than thou with their refined tastes and all that. As a result, though, their clan weakness is they are all artists in some capacity, and their weakness revolves around the fact that in their mind, no matter how good and perfect their masterpiece is, it is never finished. In a sense, they've got their own derangements because of it. The Toreador, because of their artsy-fartsy nature, have celerity, which doesn't really make sense for artsy-fartsy people, but what the fuck ever. Presence makes a little bit more sense for artsy-fartsy assholes, and Arspec, yes, Arspec. You spec the arses. Auspec, there we go. I'll get it right eventually. I swear I'm not tired at all, I swear. Alright.
Need more coffee.
I don't drink coffee.
Well, there's your problem.
Yeah, who drinks coffee?
I don't drink coffee.
I mean,
what are you, a noob? Jeez.
I've basically evolved to the just mainlining the caffeine, so.
Actually, my preferred drink to wake me up is a combination of grapefruit, cranberry, and orange juice mixed together. That shit will punch the fuck out of you.
Well, yeah, because you're basically drinking pure acid.
But it's so good, though. Alright, any questions about Toreador before I move on?
Nope.
No.
Alright, I'm going to skip over the Tremere for a second, as they are actually a lot more complicated to explain than any of the other clans, and go right to Ventru. The Ventru are basically the aristocratic blue bloods of the vampire group. They are, more often than not, the ones who are often in charge of the Camarilla. So, usually the prince is going to be a Ventru, and as a result, the prince is also just going to be a snobby asshole. The Ventru's clan flaw is that they have to, when you create a character, you have to choose one specific, and it has to be very specific, kind of blood, and that is all they can drink. If they try to drink any other kind of blood beyond that one specific kind of blood, they will immediately vomit as though they just tried to eat food. The Ventru have presence. Kind of makes sense if they're the aristocrats and want to keep everybody under their fucking thumb. In addition, they also have fortitude and dominate. Dominate, I have yet to describe, as it's also as the only other clan that has it is Tremere, is basically the ability to command others to do your bidding. Level 1, you say a simple word like stop, sit, leave, in a commanding voice, and the target has to do it. Upon failing a willpower check, that is. Mesmerize, kind of like awe, basically you look at them and they'll eventually become your bitch. All the way up to possession, where you could just straight up take mental control over a mortal's body. Dominate's also a pretty good one, in my opinion. And yeah, that pretty much sums up the Ventru. Any questions?
Nope.
Nope.
Now for the fun clan, the Tremere. The Tremere are basically the sorcerers of vampires. They have the clan flaw where they are 120% conscripted to their clan hierarchy. You do not speak out of turn. You go where where the higher-ups tell you to go. You eat what they tell you to eat. There is no deviating from their clan's hierarchy. That being said, Tremere have a plethora of very interesting abilities. To start off, they do have Auspex and Dominate as two of their clan disciplines. However, they also have the clan discipline Thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy is basically their magic. The most typical and common one that they will have is blood magic, which allows you to just basically manipulate blood. That being said, there's like 15 or 16 other schools of thaumaturgy you could learn from. Thaumaturgy of creation, you can create full-on objects, eventually actual living creatures through it. Water, you could do the same with water, so on and so forth. You can, there's like an entire fucking book just based on how many or what thaumaturgy can and can't do. Now, the Tremere's hierarchy is governed by the chantry that they're in. The chantry is basically, or that they're a part of, I will say. The chantry is basically an extra-dimensional space that is created by the more powerful Tremere. There are several chantries posted around the world. However, each one of them have a common theme. You are not allowed in until you've proven your worth to the clan. And even then, you basically are only inducted as the grunt. You have to spend generation upon generation to grovel your way up the chantry line. But the higher rank you get, the more people you can boss around, so yeah. It's like I said, pretty much Tremere are all about that fucking hierarchy. I mean, Ventrue are basically the blue blood, Tremere are basically the red tape district, or not the red tape district, like bureaucracy. That's like, they're pure bureaucracy, basically. And unless there are any questions, that sums up all of the clans that you will typically find within the Camarilla.
Yeah, nothing here.
So much information.
Well, this is being streamed, so anything you missed, you can go back and watch again.
Yep.
So to touch briefly on little offshoot clans which are found within the Anarchs, excuse me, are the true Brujah, as they're more often called. As I stated earlier, there are actually two kinds of Brujah. The biker version and now the true Brujah. These are the original ones that were created by Kane himself. They are more often than not depicted as emotionless philosophers over hot-headed jerkwads. They have much the same abilities as the other kind of Brujah, only they have one different discipline. True Brujah have a discipline called Temporis, which I have not listed in here, but basically Temporis grants True Brujah the ability to manipulate the flow of time. Good luck finding a dungeon master that'll allow you to play a true Brujah over just the box standard.
Yeah, that does seem a bit OP.
Well, you don't really get the ability to manipulate the flow of time until a minimum of level 5. Like, level 1 Temporis is you have the ability to sense when time is being manipulated. That's literally all it does. So yeah, that covers up all of the clans. I guess I will now jump assuming y'all are done taking a brief look over the disciplines, I will jump right into character creation. I've gone ahead and gave both you, Sterling, and Mustang your own character sheets. I will put into chat real quick, as I just noticed that the character sheets that I've pulled do not have it listed on there. I'll put this in chat real quick.
Is it all the stuff on the bottom of yours?
Yeah, it's all the stuff on the bottom of mine. So when creating a character, you will assign points into certain things, and these points are determined at the start by your attributes, abilities, disciplines, backgrounds, virtues, and freebies. We'll cover the first 5 and take care of freebies a little bit later. So how it's split up is 7-5-3. What this means is you pick between social, physical, and mental, decide primary, which will get 7 total points you can put in, secondary, which will get 5 total points, and tertiary, which will get 3 total points. Every stat, unless you are playing a Nosferatu, will automatically start, or every attribute, unless you're playing a Nosferatu, will automatically start with a minimum of 1 point in it. So basically you will choose, like say for Jekt, his primary was mental. I put all 7, basically divided up the 7 pretty damn evenly. His secondary was social, because he's a professional conspiracy theorist. He needs to be kind of charming and all that. And his tertiary was physical. Pretty much just put 1 across the board. For abilities, it is much the same, only in this case, the amount of points you can assign is 13 for primary, 9 for secondary, and 5 for tertiary. Abilities, on the other hand, all start at 0. So basically you have to pick and choose what your character is going to be good at. Disciplines, you just get straight up 3 points you can put. You can put 1 across the board, all 3 into 1, 2 into 1, 1 into another. Basically, you can just put it however you fucking want. Like for Ovon here, or Jekt here, I put all 3 into Dementation, as I wanted him to have the higher level Dementation abilities. Namely, the Eyes of Chaos, because that is a super awesome ability. You basically become Deadpool. Backgrounds are a little bit more complicated. I do not have them written in, I am terribly sorry. However, there are a ton of backgrounds you can choose from, which will grant you basically secondary effects. For Jekt here, I've chosen the backgrounds of resources and fame. Resources, I highly suggest everybody have at least 1 point in resource, as resource strictly dictates how much money your character has. 1, you are kind of really poor, but at least you have some money. If you opt to put no points in it, you're basically homeless. Fame is exactly how it sounds. You're famous. Whether it be amongst humans or vampires, more often than not it's amongst vampires, but still, you are famous. Which finally comes to virtues. Virtues have to do with not only their individual stats, but also humanity and willpower. With virtues, if you want to calculate your humanity, you take the total amount of points you put into virtues for conscience / conviction and self-control / whatever the fuck that is, and you add those total points together to calculate your humanity. For Jecht here, I have 4 in his conviction/conscience and 3 in his self-control, so he has a total humanity of 7. Willpower is just straight up your courage. However many points you've got in courage will dictate how much points you have in willpower. Alright, so why don't we go on and have both you, Mustang, and Sterling go on and make up your own character sheets if you would. I've already got them shared to you. If you need me to reshare them, just tell me.
So is it an escalating point cost, or is it 1 bubble is 1 point, regardless of how high you
With
go?
the initial, it is 1 bubble equals 1 point. Freebies, on the other hand, is different. I will cover freebies once y'all are done setting up your initial character sheet. For now, y'all can ignore disciplines if you want, however, or you could choose your clan and decide what disciplines your character does have by choosing it. Purely up to y'all. I don't care which.
So how do we mark on it?
Okay, so right-click on the map, and you should see a pin. Just straight down, there's a pin. That's the enter drawing mode, where you can then just click and draw. Or alternatively, how I like to do it, basically just create a bunch of pointers, like so.
Okay.
It's a lot easier than trying to draw.
Yes, it is.
And that's why I set these up as maps instead of trying to figure out how to import them for actual character sheets. Now, I'm sure both of you and you viewers have noticed on Jecht's character sheet, he's got something called merits and flaws. I will get that, take care of that once y'all are done fully setting up your character sheets, clan, disciplines, that kind of freebie points, all that fun stuff.
So I can't just like click on it and it would do a point. I actually have to move the thing around a little bit.
Yeah, you could just basically barely drag it over and then back and release. Now, while y'all are doing that, I will go on and touch on something that I omitted. I'm sure both of you noticed that under Jecht's appearance and intelligence, there is a little extra word for appearance alluring and intelligence trivia. Those indicate specialties. Whenever you have any stat or any attribute or ability that reaches level 4, you gain a specialty. Specialties basically, like say if I want to hack a computer, I would use intelligence and computer combined for a total of 6 dice. If I were to have rolled any 10s along that, because of my specialty intelligence, I would be able to re-roll that 10 for another potential success. Like, say, for that 9, if that was a 10, I would re-roll, that only rolled a 2, but if it rolled a 5, it would then add another success to the total.
You've got dice hidden, so we can't actually see what's coming up.
Oh, sorry. I will take care of that now. Alright, how about now?
There we go.
Yep.
Alright, so once again with that 9, If it were a 10, I'd be able to re-roll it, and basically you could continue doing that so long as you keep rolling a 10. And yeah, basically, so long as you have a specialty, if you roll a 10, that is considered a crit success, and you can re-roll any 10s, provided that you have a specialty in the stats that, or in a thing that you are rolling. If you do not, then you just straight up take whatever successes you get. I had one occasion where I was playing a apparently sexy as hell Bruja who managed to get 12 crit successes on a seduction roll. That did not turn out to be fun. So yeah, basically, if you've got like for you, Sterling, since you've got really good for Dex and Perception, minimum of 4. Both of those you could choose to have a specialty in it, and if you were to crit success, aka roll a 10, then you will be able to re-roll those for potentially more successes.
Do the abilities need to match the attribute? So, since I took physical as the primary, would then talents have to be the 13 in abilities?
No, it does not. Take back on Jekt. My primary was mental, secondary social, tertiary physical. For abilities, his primary was knowledge, secondary talent, and tertiary ability, or tertiary skills.
Gotcha.
So they do not have to be synonymous. You can put it wherever you want. Now, that being said, basically based on your stats or your attributes and your abilities, I would highly advise basically coming up with a job revolving around what you've given yourself. Like, say, for a very high firearm and physical stat, you could say your job is like Black Ops military or something like that.
That's kind of what I was going to ask if I could do.
And for Jekt here, because of his very high points in knowledge and mental attributes, I just thought it extremely appropriate for him to be a professional conspiracy theorist. He is very proficient in investigating the occult, so on and so forth.
I'm thinking Vampire Blade Runner? I have no idea if it's going to work, but fuck it, it's one shot. Now, drive is vehicles, I presume?
Yep. Animal kin is basically like animal handling from D&D.
All right. So do we have to pick? I'm guessing the clan for the disciplines.
Yeah, based on which clan you choose will determine which disciplines you have just as your base clan disciplines, such as with Malkavian, Auspex, Demontation, and Obfuscate.
All right. So as far as uh, like if you look at mine, what would like I basically prioritize more combat type deals, so whatever would work for that.
I am looking at yours and it's blank for some reason.
You're not able to see all the marks.
Yeah, I'm looking at, oh. Give me a second.
Ugly, but something.
Give me a second. Do you see the name on the map? Jackson.
What the?
Do you see the name on the map? Like all the way at the top?
All the way at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are roboting.
Yeah, you are too.
Probably on my end then. Put in chat the name you see on the top of the map. Weird. I don't know why it's not updating, as I see nothing on that map.
If I went out of trauma, you'd be able to look at it.
Let's try this. Try putting a marker down on this map.
If you are talking, I straight up cannot hear you.
I just heard somebody drop from voice.
Did you get the map? Can you hear me?
For Eric, yeah.
Yeah. Try putting a mark on that.
Can you see it?
Do not. I do not know why I can't see your markings. I see Sterling's. Can you see mine?
Are you doing it on Eric's?
Mustang.
Is it that blue line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird. I don't know why it's not letting me see your markings.
So you can't see my drawings, but I can see your pointers.
I apparently can't. Also, just try using pointers. That's what I was suggesting earlier, just to make things much easier.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. So that's what I have to do.
As for your question earlier, your clan does not have to be synonymous with what your character's attributes and abilities are. With the exception of Ventru, Though it is extremely rare, it is highly advised that if you want to take the Ventru race, that you have a high finance, at least level 3, and high resource background, also level 3. As, like I said, they're basically the aristocratic blue bloods.
All right, so you're able to see that now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
How's it coming on your end there, Sterling?
Pretty good. I think I've got everything except the disciplines, backgrounds, and clan stuff sorted.
Yep. Which you don't have to worry about disciplines, background, and clan stuff. Alright,
Fantastic.
so might as well go on and move on to freebie points. Give me a second. Freebie points, there are a total of 15 freebie points that you have access to. However, they are split up amongst... Give me a second. Split up amongst 7, 5, 2, and 1. That is how they are normally split up on. I will go on and share the other thing with you, experience cost. The top section is for when you actually get into playing a game, so you can ignore that and go to the bottom section where it says freebie points costs. Freebie points will allow you to have, if you use 5, you could increase your attributes by 1, 2 for an ability, 1 for a second ability to describe, or secondary ability to describe secondary ability. If you look on Jecht's sheet, you'll see that he is proficient, or he has 1 point in science. A second ability would be secondary ability would be considered technology, as they are basically one and the same. So basically, abilities that are extremely similar, if you've got 1 point in one ability, then it will only cost 1 freebie point to put 1 point into a secondary. Backgrounds cost 1 point, virtues cost 2, willpower just straight up 1, as well as humanity. Disciplines cost 7. However, you can use this to obtain any non-clan specific discipline. So if you've got, like say for Jecht here, if I've got 1 in Auspex, 1 in Demontation, and 1 in Obfuscate, but I also want Fortitude, I could use those 7 points to gain the Fortitude discipline. And finally, if you choose Tremere and want a secondary Thaumaturgy path, it's 3 points. So with the 3 freebie points, you basically take those 7 or 5, 2, or 1, and basically amongst any of this, whether it be physical from attribute or willpower, like say if you want to have a much higher willpower, you can take that 7 and put it all into willpower to basically max it out. Also, alternatively, you could say take the 5 and instead of putting it logically where the attributes are, you could put it into knowledges and increase a couple things by 1 or 1 thing by 2 and have 1 left over to get a secondary discipline. So you're not limited just by the base thought process of, oh, 7, so you can get a discipline from that. 5 goes into attribute, that kind of stuff. You can put it anywhere, just the lower the pointage will restrict the places that you could use it in. If that makes sense.
I think so.
Basically, what I'm trying to describe is you're not relegated to using the 7 for getting another discipline point and 5 for getting another attribute point. Just know that you can't use the 5 to get another discipline or 2 to get another attribute. Of course, when you get into actually playing a Vampire the Masquerade game, these points change as basically for attributes, it is the current rating times 4. So say for you, Mustang, if you wanted to get your dexterity up to 5, it would cost the current level, which is 4, times another 4 in experience to increase it to 5. Abilities are current rating times 2, so much in the same. Secondary abilities are current ratings times 1, so basically just its current rating. New specialty, as I explained earlier, when you have any attribute or ability of level 4 or higher, you automatically gain 1 free specialty. You can get a new specialty on any skill, doesn't have to be level 4 or anything, by expending 3 experience to get it. Brand new abilities cost 3. Virtue is current rating times 2. Willpower is current rating. Let's see. Background is current rating times 2. New background is 3. Clan discipline is current rating times 5. Out of clan disciplines are current rating times 7. So say for Bruja, if you had Potence at level 1, it would only cost 5 to get it to level 2, but if you had Fortitude at level 1, it would cost 7 to get it to level 2 if you were a Bruja, as that is an out-of-clan discipline. Learning a brand new discipline costs 10 experience. Secondary thaumaturgy, or even just regular thaumaturgy, is current rating times 4. Brand new path in necromancy or thaumaturgy. Necromancy, don't worry about it, but brand new path in thaumaturgy is 7. Humanity, or, well, don't have to worry about road, as that's werewolf and not vampire, but humanity is current rating times 2. Pretty much sums up the experience cost for when you actually get into games.
So I know you had mentioned this earlier, but humanity and willpower are derivative stats from what again?
Willpower is straight up whatever amount of points you have in courage. Humanity is the combined points that you have in conviction and self-control. So since you have 4 in both conviction and self-control, your humanity is 8, whereas your courage has only 3, so your willpower is 3.
Yeah, I'm burning my freebie 1 to get that up to 4.
Yeah. I get you. I'm just explaining the derivatives.
Okay, so the overall freebie points is what I'm trying to figure out.
Do you still have the experience cost story I sent to you? Or shared?
Yes.
Yeah. It's all explained in there. Attributes cost 5, abilities cost 2, secondary 1, backgrounds 1, virtues 2, willpower 1, humanity 1, discipline 7, secondary thaumaturgy pass 3. You can, the freebie points are split up amongst 7, 5, 2, 1, in which you can use anywhere on the character sheet. Don't think that you're limited to using the 7 just to pick up a new discipline. You could instead put it into, like, knowledge and gain, like, 3 points in one stat and 1 point in a secondary.
Okay, so I can use that 5 for attribute to bump up like strength or stamina up to 4. One of those.
Indeed, or you could alternatively use it for bumping your willpower up purely by 5. It's not limited to just being used in attributes. That being said, it's more commonly used for increasing an attribute by 1.
Yeah.
I need to step off mic really quick. I will be right back.
No problem.
All right, so that costs 5. Ability is 2 per dot.
Unless it's a secondary, in which case it's 1. Secondary, as I described, are basically 2 abilities that serve the same purpose, such as science and technology. Or, for example, awareness and alertness.
All right, so if I can do 2 points into stealth for that, right?
For what you're using.
The so you said the 7-5-2-1 could be done in any
Indeed.
order. So I was going to use 2 points for stealth to move that.
That would be 1 in stealth, as it costs 2 freebie points in order to increase an ability by 1.
Right.
So you could use your 2 freebie points to increase your stealth from 3 to 4, not 3 to 5.
Right, that's what I was trying to say. Maybe
Yeah.
I didn't say it right.
You can use those 2 to bring it to 4, yes.
All right, and then let's see, 1.
The 1 is much more difficult to place than the others, as it's pretty much relegated purely to secondary ability, background, willpower, or humanity.
All right, because I was going to dump 7 into willpower to bring that all the way
You
up.
can dump the 7 into willpower.
So from a mechanical standpoint, what does willpower actually do?
There are certain abilities which force you to make a willpower save, as well as certain things which will force you to actually expend a willpower. Willpower basically indicates how well you can stave off the beast. If you are about to go into frenzy, you need to make a willpower check to try and resist going into frenzy. However many points you have in willpower is the total number of die you can roll for resisting to go into frenzy. So say with your 4 in willpower, you would be able to roll 4, and 5 or up would be a success. A 1 is a bogey, which takes away a success. So for that, you would have gone into Frenzy just off of that roll.
Okay.
The more points in willpower you have, the more ability you have, or the more die you have to try and resist it. Oh, that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 successes and 4 bogeys. So you go into willpower as well.
So what about a 10? Does that take...
A 10 is a crit. There is no specialty for willpower, though, so you do not gain the ability to reroll 10s when making a willpower check. Unfortunately, it does not get rid of a bogey.
Okay.
10s are basically relegated for crit successes to allow you to reroll them if you have specialties.
So
Okay.
I'm kind of extrapolating here. So there, the kind of the DC on a given thing would be you need to make a certain number of successes on a given roll.
Yes, and a success is dictated as a 5 or above, unless there are certain conditions which would either increase or decrease the difficulty, such as if you're trying to resist going into Frenzy, but you're a Brujah, that Frenzy difficulty is increased by 2, so you need to actually have a 7 or above in order to gain a success.
Well, they're getting angry.
Yeah.
So we haven't picked like for disciplines or backgrounds or anything, right?
You have not. If you wish, you can. There is a comprehensive list that you can just pretty much Google for your background. It covers quite a lot of stuff. Like I said, I would highly advise, just as a base character, to have at least like one or two points into the resource background, as you don't want to be the homeless guy. That just makes things a lot more difficult, especially when it comes to trying to stay out of the sun. As for disciplines, like I said, they're pretty much dictated by which clan you choose to be a part of. However, you could use the 7 freebie points in order to pick up a out-of-clan discipline, which you can choose from any of the disciplines with the exception of the clan-specific disciplines, such as Demontation or Protean or Thaumaturgy. You could choose one of those disciplines, however, you need a specific feat and background in order to, not background that you have to put points into, but background for your character background in order to explain why your character has a clan-specific discipline. It's kind of like trying to learn an exotic language for a starter character in D&D. You gotta have a reason as to why your character is an elf but knows Draconic. Or Deep Speech or something like that.
Okay, so because of my stats, I would most likely have the Arsenal background.
If you want to take it, take it.
Okay. How would I write that?
Wish there was a way that you could just do like MS Paint, type into it bullshit.
I mean, you could draw on it, but that's not going to end well.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Just put it like an A on there to remind you that it's Arsenal, something like that. It's the one drawback of Fantasy Grounds.
Well, I thought this was the actual PDF that I could like write in.
Nah, this is just straight up map.
All right, so A And I have total of 5 points in the background.
You can
Okay.
put up to 5 just from the standard points that it gives you for backgrounds. As I said, you may want to, like I said, I keep using that as a crutch term. You may want to have at least 1 or 2 in resources, just so purely you won't be relegated to being a homeless person, as that makes it a lot more difficult to stay out of sunlight.
Yeah, I'm gonna put 1 into resource.
Think basically, 1 is real lower class. You probably have like an apartment or like a studio apartment or something like that. 2 is lower class, maybe a small house. More often than not, though, a slightly bigger apartment. I believe, anyways. 3 and 4 goes from like middle to middle upper, and 5 is like super upper class.
All right, so you can see those.
Yep. Only reason why there's actually writing on my character sheet with Jacked is because I actually downloaded the freaking image and manually modified it.
Right. So, since I'm going more of a, I'm making another Arvin here. More of a military, probably a personal bodyguard or something like that type deal.
Bruja would probably be your best bet for clan with that particular concept.
Okay.
Alternatively, because you do have a pretty investigation, but you did put a lot of points into appearance, I would say based on that base description for background, alternatively you could go Nosferatu, but you would have to put those points from appearance into something else.
Nah.
So yeah, Bruja, probably your best bet.
All right, I was gonna put a B for clan.
Bruja, more often than not, just considered basically the meatheads of the group. Not saying you have to be stupid, just more often than not they are pretty dim-witted comparative to the other clans, unless you're true Bruja.
I'm actually slightly smart, so.
And of course, for Bruja, you get celerity, potence, and presence
All right.
as your clan disciplines.
All right, so celerity. E real quick. Codes. Goddamn fantasy grounds.
Yeah. If I were to make an actual Vampire the Masquerade game, I would be giving you basically these images and basically tell y'all to do it in MS Paint. or something like that, because at least then you can make like a little box and type into it.
Alright, and then that's 3 into disciplines. Okay.
Yep, and you can split it up amongst however you want. You could put 3 strictly into celerity, or 1 into each, or 2 into one and 1 into the other.
Alright, and then I still have my 1, so that will go into background. Oops. So does mine look right?
It's looking good to me.
Sweet.
And it looks like Sterling's just about there as well.
I think that should actually do it. Unless I'm obviously missing something.
Aside from whatever clan and disciplines you're having, including whatever that out-of-clan discipline is.
You can't see the scribbling on there?
Nope.
No, he can't see the scribbling. That was the problem I had before.
Okay. Yeah, I just hand wrote that all in. Basically, he's got 1s in all of the baseline Toreador disciplines, and then 1 in Domination.
Oh, so you went Toreador, Mr. Archie
Yeah.
Fartsy. All
No,
right.
one of those.
All right, so y'all pretty much made up your character sheets. I will go on and get into the next portion. I've gone ahead and posted in PenDragon Academy's General a link to a website with a comprehensive list of merits and flaws. As a 13th generation vampire, you can have up to 5 merits and 5 flaws. Each of these will change you, basically give you a chance to have more role-playing with your character, or change them extremely drastically. Like, say, for Jecht Ovan Demirez, I chose the flaws of Bound to Earth, which gives 4 points. Bound to Earth basically states that I must sleep with a minimum of 1 pound or 1 handful of the earth in which I died in, or was buried in. Basically that old vampire stating thing where they have to sleep of the earth of their death. Demon Plagued, which is exactly how it sounds. There's an asshole demon after Jecht. Black and White is basically colorblindness. Rebel, he or his sire is considered to be an anarch, which amongst Camarillas is of course a bad thing. And repulsed by garlic. Whenever Jecht comes into contact with garlic, he takes aggravated damage. For his merits, he has Werewolf Companion, which does exactly how it sounds. He has a companion that's a werewolf. An Occult Library, which can basically be used as a plot MacGuffin Basically, if the party has to find something, oh, let me check my occult library and see if there's something written in something written in one of those books there. If you're a Tremere, it is highly advised that you take the occult library, as there is a high chance of your library having long lost thaumaturgy books. There are certain books in the world of darkness that teach thaumaturgy, such as the Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears teaches the base blood magic thaumaturgy. Fairy Affinity basically makes it so if there are fairies around, they will not be automatically hostile or mischievous towards Jex. Ambidextrous, which of course is exactly how it sounds, he's ambidextrous. And Eat Food. Eat Food is kind of interesting. Like I explained earlier with the Ventru, vampires do not have the ability to eat food normally. If they eat or drink anything that is blood, they will immediately throw it up. No willpower check or anything, it's just immediately coming back out. And usually mixed with a lot of blood, it's most likely going to break the Masquerade if that happens. Eat Food will allow you to basically do exactly what you're not allowed to do and eat and drink like a normal person. This will allow you to basically hold it down for a good 3 hours until you can find a place to throw up into like a toilet. Another merit that I highly advise taking. Now, with the merit and flaw system, you can basically, you gain a number of points based on the cost of the flaws. For example, with Jekt here, he's got one flaw that gives 4 points, one flaw that gives 2, and 3 that give 1, for a total of 7, 8, 9 total points that he could have. You could either choose to have these flaws translate into freebie points, to which you can use them at any place. You can basically use 7 of them to get another discipline, and then use the extra 2 to put into an ability. Or, alternatively, you could use those points that you gain from flaws to gain merits. And you can only have up to the amount of merit points equal to flaw points. So, of course, I have a merit that's 3, 2 merits that's 2, and 2 merits that's 1, for a total of 9. If that makes any sense.
It does. The link you put in the Discord
it's not working
for me.
Let me try this then. Okay, I guess that website is down. Sorry, guys. Site could not be. Yeah. Apparently it's down. Sorry. I guess y'all just have to Google it, because I ain't got, I gotta be a bit careful on this. That sucks. That was a really good comprehensive list of merits and flaws. Well, to give y'all an idea, there's basically a merit and flaw for basically every aspect of the mythos of the vampire. There's a flaw which makes it so your reflection doesn't show up in mirrors, or you have no shadow, or plants wilt in your presence. Just like there are merits that allow you to have other traits of vampires from the mythos, like a natural higher strength, or etc. Here we go. Try this.
Actually found a thing. It's the same one I found the background for.
All right, that'll work. So yeah, like I was explaining, you pretty much choose a number of flaws up to 5 and a number of merits up to 5 as a Generation 13 vampire. Now to get into a bit of a more complicated thing, there are 2 flaws that you could take that will actually increase your generation. You could take a flaw that makes you a 14th generation vampire, which is also known as a thin blood. As a result, you will only be able to increase a stat, any given ability or attribute up to 5, as well as discipline, or up to 4, as well as disciplines. And there is also a flaw that would make you into a 15th generation vampire. These you can only have any given thing up to a level of 3. However, in exchange, you also gain the ability, apparently, to survive in sunlight for a brief time, as it does only aggravated damage instead of just outright killing you. And your blood is so thin that, though rare, you also have the ability to procreate with mortals. However, in taking those, you basically decide to give yourself a much harder time, as, yeah, one, you can only have any given thing up to 4, and the other only any given thing up to 3. Now, in my explanations earlier, there was one thing that there was one clan that I did omit. Figure I might as well say it now while y'all are looking over your merits and flaws. Within the Camarilla, but more commonly within the Anarchs, there is a clan called the Caitiff. The Caitiff are basically clanless vampires. Their clan flaw is that they have no clan. They have to spend full experience in order to increase discipline. However, on the other hand, they can choose their disciplines from any clan, including clan specific, but you can only choose one clan specific discipline. There is also a long since discontinued, though I personally would allow it with a lot of thought put into it, 7-point merit that you could get called the New Clan. It is a Caitiff specific merit that allows you to create your new create an entirely new clan that also has its own disciplines. Caitiffs can be interesting, but it takes a lot of thought to make them work.
All right, yeah, there's no way I want to be trying to make that stuff on the. Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. All right, so it's a total of 9 that we can have, right, for both. So they have to be equal, but a max of 5 each. Sure, I keep track. Okay.
And I just realized that I had myself muted on stream, so they heard nothing of my explanation. Oops. This has not been a good past couple weeks.
Nope.
Alright, so I think I'm gonna go on and put us on break, let you to work out your merits and flaws, and we'll come back in about 4. Welcome back, viewers. We had last left off. My two compatriots here were working on their merits and flaws. Before coming back, Shaxon asked a very interesting question about the flaw flesh of the corpse. Flesh of the corpse is a flaw which makes your character flesh basically be in a constant state of rotting. There is a Sabbat clan called the Cappadocians, aka the Semisi, that their clan flaw is the flesh of the corpse. They are basically walking intelligent zombies. That is basically what the flesh of the corpse is. You can still heal, yes, Shaxon, just you basically look like a zombie. As a result, if you got any points in appearance, those are gone. That answer your question?
Sorry, it got dark. I had to turn on some lights.
So, how much did you miss?
You were talking about how there was another group, like a Sabbat group that.
Okay, so to re-explain, in the Sabbats there is a clan called the Cappadocian, aka the Zemisi. Their clan flaw is the flesh of the corpse. What it basically means is your body is in a constant state of decay. Basically, you turn into a walking zombie. As a result, if you take that flaw, your appearance is forfeit and is dropped to 0.
So do you basically, if you live long enough, just end up rotting away to a skeleton?
Technically, no, as the vampires do still have a regenerative factor that would keep that from happening.
So you're basically rotting as fast as you heal.
Pretty much. You get
So
to
you
basically a
Deadpool.
certain level of rot, and it's a sustained point.
Deadpool then.
That doesn't seem very hygienic.
It's not. That's why they're typically found ruling over graveyards. Nobody bats an eye at fucking zombies walking around in graveyards. The Cappadocians are also one of the 2 clans that have access to the necromancy discipline. The only other clan being the Giovanni, which I described the Ventru as the blue blood bureaucrat, aristocrat clan of the Camarilla. The Giovanni are even more so that, only instead of being on the Camarilla, Sabbat, or Anarch side, they're on their own side. It is extremely hard to tell what the motives are of the Giovanni, purely because they choose their own side over everybody else's. It is also extremely hard to become a Giovanni, as they are one of the few clans that just tells the Camarilla to go fuck themselves and does their own rights to becoming vampires. Basically, like, even the lowest rank members of their family that aren't vampires yet know about the vampire clan.
All right, so question. All the things that I have 4 in.
All the things you have 4 in, you have an automatic specialty in that particular attribute or skill. Which, with a specialty, as I stated, will allow you to re-roll 10s to potentially gain more successes. Alright, so quick thing. I presume neither of y'all are taking the 14th or 15th generation flaw for your character.
Nope.
Nope.
Alright, so we'll go on and assume that you're starting off as a 13th generation vampire. I'm going to make a quick modification onto your sheet. The sheets. The line that I'm putting on your sheets is the total amount of blood points that you are allowed to have at any given time, maximum, for your current generation. For the 13th generation, you are only allowed to have up to a max of 10 blood points in your blood pool. You can only expend 1 blood point per turn, and you can only increase a trait to a max of 5 through expending blood points. So basically, I just struck through the line indicating how many blood points y'all have, which is up to 10.
Okay. Okay.
So to explain, to move on to a little bit more explanation, you were asking earlier about the purposes of willpower. There are a few things which will force you to make a willpower check. Like I said, the frenzy dominates another one. You have to make a willpower in order to resist dominate, and so on. There are some things, however, that require you to expend willpower. There are certain disciplines at higher levels that will require the expenditure of a willpower point, which means you will permanently lose a willpower point until you earn it back. Like, so instead of, for you, Mustang, you have full 10 on willpower. If you expended a willpower point, you put a slash through the box, and now you can only roll up to 9 die for your willpower instead of 10, as you had to expend one in order to do a certain task. There is also such a thing as aggravated damage. Aggravated damage, unlike regular damage, cannot be healed by normal means. For every 1 point of aggravated damage, say for if you were all the way down to crippled in aggravated damage, that's 6 points of aggravated damage. For every 1 point of aggravated damage, you must expend 1 willpower in order to heal that aggravated damage. So if you're all the way down to crippled with all of it being aggravated damage, you would only be able, you'd have to expend 6 willpower points in order to heal all the way back up. Luckily, though, aggravated damage doesn't happen too terribly often.
Yeah, it's what, fire and specific weapons?
Oh, fuck. Sorry, I just deleted all of your things. But to answer your question, yeah, it's pretty much relegated to fire, sunlight, and specific magical weapons.
Alright, now I gotta remember what I had.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button.
Oh, you got rid of all of his stuff?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
clicked the wrong button and it just, there all of it
Yep.
goes.
Wipe my sheet.
Wish there was a way you could, a button you could press to do an automatic undo.
Control Z.
Seriously. Now, a quick note actually about sunlight. To normal characters, aka 13th generation, actually almost all the way up to, like, I believe 4th generation, it's pretty much an insta-kill. You step outside, you're gonna be dead. But there is a certain point, it's like 3rd and 2nd generation, if you have absurdly high fortitude, the discipline fortitude, as well as stamina, you can actually survive out in the sunlight. But you need to be an absurdly high generation with absurdly high stats in order to actually pull that off.
So my 3 in stamina doesn't help.
Your 3 in stamina don't help. Yeah, it's going to be an insta-kill. As the sunlight, I believe, deals an automatic 15 aggravated damage per second you're out in it. So even with that said, you could technically survive out in the sun with absurdly high abilities and disciplines, or attributes and disciplines, but only for a certain amount of time. And that time being determined in which you've taken enough damage to where your body goes into frenzy and forces you to basically dig a hole for you to hide in. And I guess that's actually a good place to touch on the topic of damage. I just talked about aggravated damage. Uh, Over in the bottom left or bottom right corner of your character sheet, there is a section called Health. How this works is when you take a point of damage, you add a tick onto the health chart. It goes from bruised to hurt, injured, wounded, mauled, crippled, and eventually incapacitated. There is one state beyond incapacitated and one state beyond that. But for now, I will touch on the base that's listed here. Whenever you take damage that is not aggravated damage, like say you take enough damage to get to wounded, you see that it shows a -2. You can heal using your blood, you can heal a number of damage points that you've currently got. So say if you've got 10 blood points and you're at wounded 2, it would take 2 blood points in order to heal once. If you want to heal all the way to just bruised, you'd have to expend 4 blood points in order to get down to bruised. Bruised will just heal over time. And that basically sums up the base damage. Basically, the more damaged you are, the more blood points it takes to use for blood healing. Incapacitated, whenever you hit incapacitated, you are basically knocked the fuck out. You're not in technically a dying state. You can be woken up, but if you take much more damage over incapacitated, the vampire enters a state of torpor. Torpor is a basically damage-induced coma. If you enter torpor, you are most likely going to be asleep for a very long time. So basically, when you enter torpor, you may as well relinquish your character sheet because it is highly unlikely that they are going to wake up anytime soon. This, by the way, is one of the main methods of vampires reaching much higher generations. There are quite a few times, or quite a few methods of vampires basically forcing themselves into a torpor state purely so they can rest all the way through to a generation increase. That being said, there's no telling how long it's going to take you to wake up, so you could sleep for 10 years, you could sleep for 1,000 years. The only damage portion after that is final death. Final death is, of course, exactly how it sounds. If you take aggravated damage that puts you into incapacitated or keep taking damage after you enter torpor, your body will disintegrate and you are just full on dead. No coming back.
I'm guessing there's no true resurrection in this game.
No, there is not. There are mummies that could bring you back. However, good luck getting to Egypt and convincing a mummy to bring you back. Something I forgot to mention, typically if you reach an incapacitated state, it takes a full 24 hours for you to heal up one point to where you're crippled, and then you can heal as normal. And that is a full 24 hours of rest.
Alright, I think I got this put back together.
Looks about right to me. Sorry again about that.
It happens.
Alright, both of y'all got your merits and flaws?
Yep.
Yeah, I think the only thing I don't have on here is the specializations for being above 4.
Don't worry about specializations, either of you. You can just say that you're specialized in any of the given stats. You don't have to pick it right now. So might as well move on to one of the last things. You two are going to fight each other. Because might as well get into the basics of combat. Alright, so when combat starts, Anybody that's a part of the combat needs to roll alertness and awareness. So roll d10s equal to the amount of points you have in alertness and awareness.
So that would be, since I have one, it's 1d10 and alertness.
You've got one in alertness and one in awareness, so roll one in each.
Okay.
Ultimately 2d10. Alright. So, 1, 2. Okay, so decidedly Sterling rolled much higher than you. Sterling gains top of initiative. Sterling, we will go on and say that you have a Buck Standard pistol. Same with you, Mustang. To make a pistol shot against Mustang, roll dexterity plus firearms. DC difficulty you're looking at is 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so that's 6 successes. Mustang, you can roll dexterity, and you do not have the talent dodge, so just straight dexterity to see if you can force misses. That is a botch, so 2. Alright, Sterling, you hit. Sterling will now roll, I believe, 2d10 for the base damage, plus... Yeah, I think 2d10. So yeah, roll 2d10 for damage. Alright. Sterling got 1 damage in. Mustang, roll your stamina for soak. Unless you have fortitude, in which case roll fortitude as well. One success, but 1 botch. Alright, you take 1 damage. You are at bruised. And with that, Sterling can move, but it doesn't really matter. You're Toreador, so I don't think you have anything else you could do. Let me double check on disciplines.
Could I pop a celerity and make another attack?
You are a Toreador, so yeah, you can expend 1 of your 10 blood points in order to take another action, which would allow you to make another attack. Yes.
So what the hell, let's do that.
So yeah, roll exactly the same. Dexterity plus firearms versus Mustang's dexterity. Let's see, 1 botch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, even with that botch, alright. Sterling, you hit. Roll damage, which is the 2. Versus, you do no damage. Alright. Mustang, you're up. You've got melee and firearms. If you wish to make a firearms, you can do dexterity plus firearms. Otherwise, melee is dexterity plus melee.
Alright, so dex and firearms, so a total of 8.
Yeah. I see 110 and 1 bogey. Okay, so you only, let's see. I see 110 and 1 bogey. Sterling, you do not have, let's see. Yeah, you do not have, oh, you do. So, first off, we'll go on and take care of Mustangs first. Mustang, roll 1 more d10. Alright, so that's for a total of 1, minus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, minus 1, 3. Sterling, roll another d10, as you do have Alright. Mustang, you hit. Roll 2d10. Alright, that's 1 damage. Roll soak. You do not soak, so Sterling, you are at 1 wound. You are down to bruised. Mustang, you can do much the same. Pop a blood point for celerity and take another attack action.
Yep.
Reroll the 10. Alright, Mustang, you decidedly hit. Roll damage. That's 2 damage. Roll your soak. That's 2 soaks, so Mustang, you do no damage this turn. Or this shot.
Alright.
And that'll bring it back over to Sterling.
All right. So with the acute senses, does that add anything to the attack roll?
Acute senses. That's, I'm assuming, one of your merits. I didn't get a chance to look at your merits because they're not in the notes.
They are in the notes.
I only see Mustang's merits and flaws.
Did you put yours to public?
I'm the Dungeon Master, so I should be able to look at them myself. Whatever. Acute senses only applies for basically perception checks.
Okay.
So if Mustang was trying to hide, then you would have a bonus to that, but he's not trying to hide.
Gotcha.
Okay, re-roll that 10.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So I have Daredevil. All rolls made by the player on an action that is difficulty 8 or higher and is sure to inflict at least 3 levels of lethal damage or more, add 3 dice to the roll, and ignore a single botch in the roll. Does that apply to this?
The difficulty's 5, so no.
Okay.
Alright, so go on and roll your dexterity.
I just need to go ahead and load these.
Alright, unfortunately you only have half the amount that you need, so go on and roll your 2d10 damage. That's 2, roll your soak. That's 2, no damage. You can drop another.
Here a while.
You can drop another blood point, or if y'all feel like y'all have got the gist of combat, then we can just move on.
I think we can just move on.
Oh yeah, after you get 2 turns.
Go on and take your turn,
I
Mustang.
mean, you can shoot me again. I mean, come on.
Oh man. Alright, let's go.
Alright, so that pretty much covers the gist of combat. Certain things will change combat, like, say, Mustang, if you wanted to make a melee hit, you would do dexterity plus melee plus brawl, but you don't have brawl, so it would just be dex plus melee, and then for the damage die, it would be your strength, and if you wanted to put a point into it, potence. So you would be able to roll 5 damage die if you hit for strength plus potence instead of the... So yeah, there's pick and choose for combat. Different things do different stuff, that kind of fun stuff. There are certain things that the Dungeon Master would ask of you, like, say... Mustang. You're at a terminal and you're trying to hack it. The Dungeon Master would then most likely ask you to roll intelligence plus computers in order to hack into the computer. And depending on the level of the lock, would be anywhere between difficulty like 4 through 10. Actually 4 through 9, because the difficulty doesn't go up to 10. All of these rolls are made with the exact same die, in which it's a D10. Y'all get it?
Yep.
All right. And I think just have one last thing. The when it comes to Vampire the Masquerade in general, I'm sure the viewers have already noticed, but you guys have already noticed as well. Unlike Dungeons and Dragons, unlike fucking Star Wars, Call of Cthulhu, all that fun stuff, Vampire the Masquerade is almost exclusively theater of the mind, as typically Vampire the Masquerade takes place spanning across cities, if not entire worlds. And it's kind of difficult to make up a map for this kind of shit, especially when you take into consideration that a lot of them are taking place in a time not necessarily long since past, but long enough to where there aren't any active maps up that you can just download. Like, there was this one campaign I ran in that was taking place back in down in Louisiana during Civil War times. You're not going to really find a map of that. At least not an accurate one. So yeah, for those who want to get into Vampire the Masquerade, one of the biggest hurdles you're going to have to contend with is the fact that it's all theater of the mind. And unless y'all got any questions, I think that just about covers it.
No, this was good.
Mustang?
For somebody who doesn't like vampires, this is actually pretty fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I was explaining to you two earlier. The other biggest hurdle to getting into Vampire the Masquerade is just the fact that it is so un-user-friendly when it comes to new players. There are so many things that you have to learn day one in order to be able to really play Vampire the Masquerade.
I mean, the dice mechanics themselves aren't that too terrible. It's just all of the non-dice mechanical stuff that you got to deal with.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's typically why I would highly advise for new players, they try playing one of the, air quotes, easier clans, such as Brujah, in that basically have the kinds of clans that whenever you use a discipline, it only adds to a certain stat. Like, you could technically use celerity to increase your dexterity for making an attack. Or, basically, yeah, just, I would advise trying something akin to, like, Brujah, maybe Toreador, and eventually work your way up to things like Tremere and Malkavian, because, I mean, especially with Malkavians and Tremers, those two I find to have the highest, I guess best way to put it, skill ceiling, as most everybody, especially when it comes to like Malkavians, they view them just as like the insane comic relief, when in reality they have a lot more uses beyond just being cuckoo.
I mean, being cuckoo is a big part of it, but they can do it.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the higher level, in fact, I think it's level 6 for Demontation, is the Malkavian get so crazy they are linked up to what is known as the Insanity Network. Basically, they are able to, instead of extrapolating information out of seemingly random events, they actually get information directly from other Malkavians.
So there's a big old friggin' hive mind.
Pretty much. However, because of this, they also take on extra insanities. Malkavians are, like I said, a bit tricky to play, but that's exactly why I fucking love them.
I mean, I remember from the old Bloodlines PC game is that, you know, if you played a Malkavian, the entire game was just one giant acid trip.
Pretty much. And there's one section in the Bloodlines game where you can just sit there for a good hour watching TV. Like, after the 3/4 of the way done point, the TV announcer's just going like, ooh, ow, you got me. Or sources say that the police know it was you.
I mean, the other big thing I remember is you can actually have a conversation with one of the lamp poles.
No, it wasn't a lamppost. You have a conversation with a stop sign. And you're sitting there telling it to stop over and over until you finally get to the point where you go, you've made a powerful enemy this day, sign. So yeah, Malkavians can be fun, as a person who plays Malkavian, just don't think of them as the box standard crazy person. They can do a lot more than just be fucking crazy. I mean, I had one Malkavian a while back that, yeah, he was crazy as hell, ended up with multiple personality disorder as well as bipolar disorder on 3 of his 4 personalities. But each of his personalities had took over different facets of his life. One of my more personal favorites of his personality was Tatiana the Russian spy. Her main thing was just taking over all the stealth aspects. Malkavians are fun. And of course, Tremere, I say to hold off on playing Tremere until you get a bit more experience, is because just juggling the different thaumaturgy paths can be a task in and of itself.
Sounds like trying to play a advanced level spellcaster.
Pretty much. I mean, it's like I said, I'm pretty sure there's 13 or 14 different thaumaturgy paths you can choose from. Yeah, so it gets kind of confusing. Alright, so thank you, both of you, Sterling and Shaxton, for joining me this day. I was hoping to have more, but